lifespan. In just 120 years, we got that same 25-year increase in lifespan. This is no doubt due to improvements in sanitation, medicine, and even nutrition, okay? 120 years, we got a 10-fold increase in lifespan. But has our health kept pace? Right? Has our health kept pace? So when do you think aging starts? A lot of young people in the room, you're thinking, Brian, you're not talking to me. Why did I waste a Sunday to come out to hear you talk about old people? But when does aging start?
19.
19. So that's funny. So she said in the womb, and my dad always used to say birth is terminal. So I'm a little more optimistic than that, but it starts really right around our 20s. So when we go look at a lot of our physiology, our reaction time literally slows our entire life, right? Our eyes, every single person in this room will need reading glasses in their 40s, okay? Our ears, look at this. We start to see things declining in our 20s, so right around that 19, 20. Did you ever wonder why almost every single elite professional and Olympic athlete in the world is in their 20s or 30s? Because this is when our heart rate starts to decline and also our breathing capacity begins to decline. So aging starts really, really young. And somewhere in our, like 35 to 40, we all start losing bone mineral mass and muscle mass as well. So this is a constant challenge. Because what's the one thing that's pushing us constantly the wrong way down that continuum?
Cell degeneration?
It's time, right? But cell death, cell regeneration, all that decreases. Our systems decrease as we get older. So even now, you say, Brian, I'm young, I'm healthy. If you keep doing what you're doing now, in some time in the future, it's not gonna work and you're gonna start to slide the wrong way on that continuum, okay? So this is our founder, Dr. Myron Wentz, and he loves to say we are living too short and we're dying too long, okay? But what is he referring to? He's actually referring to the scientific data. The fact is we will spend the last 10 years of our lives, on average, suffering from some sort of health deficit, okay? It can be something small or it can be something massive and major. Fact, okay? So let's take a couple examples. It can just be not being able to tie your shoes. Maybe you can't button your shirt, open a cupboard up high. You know, I think a lot of you follow me on Facebook. You've seen, like, my dad has had a number of health challenges. I mean, he's a walking miracle, literally. He's gotten to the point now where, I mean, he's organ transplant, cancer survivor, gallbladder removed, and then about 4 years ago, he had hundreds of tiny little strokes. And he was really bad about like doing his physical therapy and everything. So now his cognition's really declined and he walks kind of hunched over and he shuffles his feet. I don't know if you've ever seen people kind of walk like that. He doesn't pick his feet up when he walks. So clear sign of brain damage, right? So he'll show up. We actually had to move him to Salt Lake City, Utah to be closer to us so we could take care of him. And he'll show up at my house with his shoes untied. So he's already sick. He can't walk very well, and he can't even tie his shoes. So now he's walking with the shuffle, with the shoes untied. He's increasing his risk of a fall, right, which is further going to compromise his health, right? So these things sort of compound, if you will, over time, and if we don't look after them, they keep compounding and moving us the wrong way on that continuum. My mom was the breadwinner of our family. She worked in customer service for a local phone company for about 35 years. 35 years answering phones, typing complaints on a computer, right? Calling out service requests, whatever, type. She ended up getting carpal tunnel in her wrist really bad, and it manifests into full-blown osteoarthritis. Nothing she's gonna die from, but it's negatively affecting her quality of life because my dad recently had to go around their house and change, you know, those kind of turning doorknobs that we have on our doors to ones a little bit more like that, the kind of lever kind, where she could use her body weight to open up the door and get in. So these things are affecting our quality of life. Again, they can be small things like just your wrist hurt to really massive chronic things. The bottom line and the point I want to make is that lifespan is outpacing healthspan. Our health is not keeping up with these improvements in lifespan that we've experienced in just these last 120 years. So if I plot that loss of the 10 years of quality of life, it literally is setting us back about 50 years in all the progress that we've made, right? Unacceptable. We are spending too much of our, especially later lives, living in this part of the health continuum. But I want to say that doesn't have to be the case. Have you guys seen this video? It went viral a little while ago, but isn't this the way to go, right? I mean, you can see he's 90 years old. This is what we should all be striving for, right? He's happy, he's smiling, he's moving around great at, what did you guess, 90, 95 years of age. So really the question in nutrition and medicine especially is, how do we bridge that gap between health span and lifespan? And I want to postulate that this gap exists exclusively because of the choices that we're making in our lives, okay? So now this is audience participation time. How many people in here think you control your health span? You think you have control? Or do you think you're just playing a game of poker? Like you're dealt a hand of cards and that's what you have to play your whole life. You control your health span, you think?
Some control.
Some control?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about it. So again, coming back to aging, 10 years ago, right, is kind of when I left academia and stopped studying aging. But we always talked about the rule of three: lifestyle, environment, and genetics. So we talked about the rule of three: 33% lifestyle, 33% environment, 33% genetics. I'll tell you, just 10 years ago, lifestyle and environment, we just thought you had majority control, 66% control of your health. That's great, majority control. Well, I'm going to talk about maybe some new science that emerged, but I'm curious in here, in this room, do you think you can control your lifestyle?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody should raise their hand, right? These are the choices that we make in our lives. How about your environment?
No.
Yeah,
More
right.
difficult, more difficult.
Just like every audience, it gets more difficult for sure, right? I mean, we might have family ties, job ties, but you can't control your environment. And if it's not the city you live in per se, or the town, the home you live in, maybe you can actually control the environment inside of your home. You can make things healthier internally. And how about genetics? How many people think control your genetics?
Yeah, you can.
This is a smarter crowd than previous ones, for sure. Well, we'll talk about it. And my goal now is to show you the science that actually you can control all of these things, okay? Let's talk about it. This is a study done by Dr. Walt Willett in the very prestigious journal, Science. Dr. Willett is at Harvard University back in the United States, a very prestigious university there, probably our equivalent to your Cambridge. Dr. Willett is an epidemiologist. Okay, and what an epidemiologist does is he's really good at looking at populations of people, looking at the things they're doing in their lives, and whether or not those things are positively or negatively affecting their health outcomes. So a great example of work done by Dr. Willett and his colleagues would be something like smoking, right? We all know how terrible smoking is for us. If you're a smoker, the best thing you could do for your health is quit today. I mean, listen to this. If you're a smoker, you quit smoking today, 1 year from today, your risk of developing lung cancer goes down by 80%, right? That's a clear lifestyle modification you can make, okay? Stop smoking if you're a smoker. But what Dr. Willett wanted to do is stop looking at those negative things that were affecting our health, but asking the question, were there positive things you could do in your life to increase your health outcomes? So when he started looking at things like exercise, lifestyle modifications, and oh, by the way, nutritional supplementation, what he found, and I legally can't tell you what these are, but you can probably guess what the major chronic conditions are of the world. But what he found is depending on the specific condition, you could prevent these health conditions from occurring in somewhere between 70 to 90% preventable if you're willing to lead a healthy lifestyle. And I can tell you this last one has to do with carrying around too much extra weight and the complications that come from that. 70 to 90% preventable if you're willing to make those changes in your lives, okay? Just one study on lifestyle. So how about environment? Is your environment important to your health?
Yes. Very much.
Absolutely. So scientists like to do what they call immigration studies. So here again is another study. And again, the condition doesn't matter because they've repeated this over and over and over again with different conditions, right? A lot of the ones I just showed you before. So what they'll do is they'll look at a population that maybe has a low incidence of some condition in their home native country and what happens to those individuals when they move somewhere else, okay? So in this case, what they did is they looked at Chinese born in China, Shanghai born Chinese. They have a very low rate of this condition, 1.8 per every 100,000, okay? Then what they did is they looked at what happened when they moved to the UK. Look what happens. And they lived there 5 to 10 years. Their rate goes up by 10 to 15 fold. Not percent, fold. Okay? Astronomical increase. If they're first generation born here in the UK, their rate goes up by another 50%. It's crazy. And then if you're unfortunate enough to look like me and live in North America, your rate is astronomical. Okay? So clear scientific evidence that where you're living is affecting your health outcome. Okay? What about genetics? You guys were, I saw a few hands, but maybe a little bit skeptical. So let's talk about genetics. Anybody know who this is?
Dolly.
Anybody here from Ireland? Can I tell an Irish joke? I'm kidding, totally kidding. So who said Dolly? Someone say Dolly? Yeah, and why was Dolly famous? First ever cloned animal, right? It's actually a sad number of years ago now. But she was famous, first ever cloned animal. It was a revolution in science and medicine, okay? Now, anybody know who this cat is? She's a lot less famous, but she single-handedly started a brand new field of genetics. You guys ready for a bunch of bad jokes? So her name is Cece. Guess what Cece stands for? Copycat, right? So Cece is famous because she was the first ever cloned domestic animal, okay? So this is a funny story. There was a company who revolutionized this process. It turns out to be very technically difficult to clone a cat or a dog. There was a company that had a business model of taking DNA from your cat or dog when it was still alive, taking the DNA, putting it in the freezer, and when Fluffy dies, they could clone you a new cat. Their business model, okay? So in the United States, we call our banks savings and loans. So just another bad joke, but the name of the company was Genetic Savings and Clone. Right? Just scientists have no imagination. But if Cece is a clone of her mom, does anybody see a problem? If this was the cat you wanted cloned and that's what you got, would you be a little bit pissed? You'd be like, you gave me the wrong animal, you gave me the wrong DNA. I want my cat back, right? She looks different. So the scientists thought initially they made a mistake, right? Made a mistake. So they went in, they double checked their work. Sure enough, the same primary DNA sequence. What? So what's going on? And just, that's her full grown there, so you can say she didn't grow out of her coloring. Well, what's going on? Well, it turns out there's a chemical code that lives on top of your DNA code that's more important to determine whether or not your genes are turned on or turned off. So you could have a genetic predisposition for something, but yet that chemical code can completely override it, okay? It's crazy. So the next slide, I'm gonna show you a picture of two identical twin sisters, okay? What? So scientists, when they're doing experiments, they love to work in these experimental models because they can control the genetic background. They can control the genetic background in rats, mice, fruit flies, worms, whatever it might be. So these two mice are technically identical twin sisters. They have the exact same genetic background, but they were born from different mothers, okay? So, excuse me, what's the difference between the two? Well, this mouse mom was fed an unhealthy mouse diet and was not allowed to exercise in her cage, okay? This healthy, lean, brown-colored mouse, her mom was allowed to exercise. And when I mean exercise, not forced, all they did was put a hamster wheel inside of the cage and she could just run whenever she wanted, voluntarily. And then was also fed a healthy mouse diet. And these studies have been repeated over and over and over again, and not just with lifestyle, but with exposure to various environmental toxins. So depending on what we're exposed to can affect not just our genetic outcome, but the genetic outcome of our offspring. But listen to this, it's not just the first generation, right? So your kids, and it's even not just your kids' kids, but it turns out there's at least 4 generations you can pass on this chemical code, right? So it's inheritable as well. So think about that for a second. Your lifestyle, your environment is not just affecting your DNA and how your genes are expressed, but it's expressing your children's children, and their children as well. I mean, my grandmother was British, actually, and it turns out, rumor has it, she was a very wild woman. So think for her, lifestyle affecting my DNA is pretty scary to me. So think about that. You're affecting your future generations. This is a little bit of an aside, but just this year, they were able to clone primates, and they were able to clone primates in a way that could be utilized in humans. So we don't necessarily need to get into the bioethics of it all, but maybe it is coming that we can start to modify genes, and that stuff's coming. So DNA is going to play a huge role in our health outcomes. And again, just for more bad science humor, but it's monkey see and monkey 2, isn't that? Okay, so Brian, I'm not a sheep, I'm not a mouse, I'm not a monkey. Does this actually happen in humans? Okay, that should be your next question. So when we're talking about epigenetics, that's just a fancy name for that chemical code that lives on top of your DNA. And then here, monozygotic just means what? Identical twins, okay? So is that chemical code different between 2 twins? So what they did is they looked at a 3-year-old, these 2 twins, when they were 3 years old. They looked at that chemical code. And you don't really need to know the details other than to see those lines basically all line up. They're the same. They measured the same chemical code 47 years later when they were 50 years old. And can you see how the lines are very different now? So as these 2 twins went off and led their separate independent lifestyles in their unique environments, it was affecting that chemical code. So very clear evidence that your lifestyle, your environment, is affecting your genetics, okay? So think about that. You literally have majority control over your health and your health span. And again, you guys all know this, but health is a function of how we live our lives. And there's a lot of different ways that we say that, right? I like the saying personally that our bodies are really a reflection of our lifestyle, right? So, you know, if someone's really fit, they obviously go to the gym. If someone's overweight, they don't. So I can make the point that nutrition is the most important thing. And if you were to pin me down and ask me what is the most important thing in those 8 pillars of health, I would say nutrition is the most important. I can make the point that nutrition affects your lifestyle, nutrition affects your environment, and nutrition is affecting that DNA chemical code, okay? So again, those of you that know me know I'm an avid gardener. I grow my own veggies 8 months out of the year. I love to grow plants everywhere in my home. I've been in Europe for about a week, okay? So if I had a house plant sitting on my kitchen counter, I'm here for a week, no one's around to water, fertilize it, talk to it, whatever it might be. What's gonna happen? And what's that plant gonna look like when I come back home? It's gonna start to dry out a little bit, right? I might come back and it might look like this. Now let's say I'm enjoying my time, maybe my flight gets canceled, I have to extend my trip here another week or 2. Well, hang on, let me take a step back. If I come home and I pour love, water, fertilizer into that plant, can I nurse that plant back to health?
Yes.
Right? Depending on how bad a shape it's in, yeah, absolutely I can nurse this plant back to health. I can argue if there's any green material left on that plant, I can nurse it back to health, okay? And that's absolutely what would happen. But like I was saying earlier, if I were to extend my trip, something happens, I'm away for longer, I'm not there to water, fertilize that plant, what happens? Eventually, I hit a point of no return, right? No green material left on that plant, no amount of love, water, fertilizer is gonna nurse that plant back to health. So is that kind of a fair little thought experiment? I mean, is that, anyone kind of disagree with that whole premise? So if we come back to this health continuum, why what we know to be true with plants, why don't we have that same premise, that same mindset when it comes to us, okay? Why is that? So are you really healthy, or do you want to start intervening in some aspect of your health? And I really want you to drill down and get serious about every single aspect of health. So that's really kind of a high-level overview of why nutrition is so important. But now I want to get down into why is proper nutrition so important for overall health, okay? Coming back to the internet, my pet peeve. Coming back to the internet. So much misinformation out there, it drives me crazy. You know, one of the things we make available on AskTheScientist.com is you can click a link and submit a question to us. And some of the questions I get, I should make a best of, like a best hits, and read them to you. You guys would get some good laughs for sure. And we start thinking, where do people get this stuff? And most of the time, 99% of the time, it's from goofy stuff out on the internet, okay? I want to make the premise that we've overcomplicated nutrition. We've overcomplicated it. We need to get back to the basics and really thinking about basic, foundational, fundamental nutrition. So when we talk about foundational nutrition, we use the word essential a lot. Does anybody know what the word essential means in biology?
Absolutely necessary.
Absolutely necessary. That's a fantastic way to put it. Absolutely necessary for life, right? If we do not get these things from our diet or nutritional supplement, you will die. And yes, this even goes for the essential amino acids, the essential fatty acids, and even carbohydrates are absolutely essential. I laugh when someone comes up to me and tells me they're on a no-carb diet. You are not on a no-carb diet. If you were, you would die. Can you be on a low-carb diet?
Yeah.
Yes. But when we're talking low-carb, the absolute minimum would be 25 grams per day. That's a miserable life. Most people who are living these low-carb diets are on maybe 50 grams, but more like 100, 150 grams per day, okay? So you absolutely also need carbohydrates. And then obviously vitamins and minerals. I think most of us, when we think about essential nutrition, that's what we think about, vitamins and minerals. Foundational nutrition, just for fun, does anybody know when the last essential vitamin was discovered? How long ago? What do you think?
Fairly recently.
No, maybe 5 years ago.
No, not even close.
50?
75 years ago, we discovered the last essential vitamin, okay? We've known for 75 years what the human body needs to survive. Now, don't get me wrong. Have there been health advancements made in maybe the form of the nutrient, especially the dose of the nutrient we need? Have we found new nutrients that provide us additional health benefits? Absolutely. But we've known the basics for at least 75 years, okay? So think about that. We're overcomplicating nutrition. So I know some of you have seen this video, and this is a younger, less gray, fatter Brian. But I like this video because it really illustrates the importance of nutrition and what we're putting in our mouths. So, do me a favor and just look at your hands for a second. But where does all this stuff come from? I mean, is it magic? Right? I gave you that plant analogy. It's one way we're different. We're not solar powered. We don't make energy or chemicals from the sun. Everything we're made up of literally comes from the food we put in our mouths. Okay? This video illustrates it. So it's a little bit Americanized because I'm eating a hamburger and fries. I know you love hamburger and fries here, but maybe fish and chips, whatever you want to apply, it'd be the same outcome, I promise.
So today I'm going to do a little experiment on myself. You know that old adage, you are what you eat? Well, today I hope to prove that to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eat an unhealthy meal, an unhealthy fast food meal, and then I'm going to come back a week later and I'm going to eat a healthier alternative. By eating that unhealthy fast food meal, we'll visually be able to see all the fat that ends up in my blood. So what Nurse Tony's doing here is taking my baseline blood draw. This will be the blood draw that we'll compare all other blood draws to. Did I mention how much I hate needles? So thanks, Dave and Dr. Lenz, for putting me up to this. Ha! Just kidding. Well, first one down. Well, here it is. I never eat like this, but anything for science. Cheers. Go test my blood. So what I'm going to do now is take the tube of blood that Nurse Tony collected. I'm going to put it in the centrifuge and we're going to spin it. And what that's going to do is settle the red blood cells down at the bottom of the tube. And so then we'll be able to see the serum or the liquid component of the blood. Okay, here's our blood tube. So you can see here on your left is that baseline blood draw we took before I ate the meal. And here, as soon as 1.5 hours after I ate that fast food meal, you can see how cloudy that is compared to the baseline sample. But here we are, we're back again. I'm taking the baseline blood draw for my healthy meal. So this is more like it. A nice side salad here. We've got chicken breast and some rice, and a piece of rye bread. Well, here we are spinning out my blood draw, comparing the healthy meal to the baseline. And as you can see clearly, there's not a whole lot of difference between the baseline and that second blood draw. And then we compare that with last week's sample after eating the fatty meal at the same time point. You can clearly see there's a huge difference between the healthy meal and that fatty fast food meal.
So I hope that comes through on the screen. And forgive me, I saw some people squirm in the back. I should have warned you that a human was harmed in the making of that video. It is as terrible as you'd guess to have your blood drawn on camera and then have a camera in your face while you're eating a burger and fries. But just in case you couldn't see it, here's the freeze frame from that kind of last frame. And you don't really need to see the specific details, but can you see on these first two how you can just see through it? You can see the backsplash on that lab bench. And here, you can't see through that blood tube, right? That's literally the butter coursing through my veins after I ate that burger and fries. Crazy. Did anyone catch how long that was?
1.5 hours.
1.5 hours. And that was as quick as we could get from the burger joint back to the laboratory, okay? First blood draw we already saw that fat. So what we didn't know that day was when we were gonna see the most fat in my blood. So they drew my blood every hour for 8 hours that day. I mean, I looked like a heroin addict in one arm and a pincushion in the other arm. It was a bad day for me. But still, 8 hours after I ate that burger and fries, you could still, I didn't have to put it in a fancy machine, you could still visually see the fat in my blood after that burger and fries. And it is well known that a fat, or a meal heavy in saturated fat, induces an oxidative stress. So think about that. If you're eating like this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're literally never giving your blood vessels a break, and you're constantly battling your diet. And I like to show that video because it gets across. We take for granted what we put in our mouth actually ends up in our bloodstream, and it's what our cells are utilizing to make the things they need to make, okay? We've overcomplicated nutrition, and we need to get back to the basics, okay? So let's do a little thought experiment here again. Everyone know who this is? Andy. So let's talk about nutrition for just a second. So he was famous for a number of reasons, but the point I want to make was, he was famous to go on hunger strikes to make his political points, and he would tend to go on about 21-day hunger strikes. And when I think about this, it blows my mind because we didn't have the science back then. But it turns out that 21 days is actually a very important kind of break point. So for 21 days, Gandhi would eat nothing more than just sip on water, okay? And then 22 days, he would start to slowly reintroduce food. And he'd nurse himself back to health, and he'd be fine. But it turns out, if he were to have gone much longer, getting up towards around 30 days, he would start to have some physiological consequence of that starvation. And if he were to go much longer than that, he would ultimately die, right? That's dying of starvation. So if we're thinking about nutrition, what did he die from? Did he die from a lack of micronutrition or macronutrition? What do you think? How many people say micronutrition, vitamins and minerals? How many people say macronutrition? How many people don't know and mad they wasted a Sunday? No, it's actually macronutrition. Okay, you tend to die from a heart attack when you starve to death. I mean, look how skinny he is here in this photo. Our heart runs almost exclusively on fat. So when you start to run out of that fat stored to power your heart, it stops beating, you usually die of a heart attack, okay? So you can argue that macronutrition, that food that we're eating, is actually more important for our survival than even vitamins and minerals. Now, if you think about it, and just to get very cold, sterile, scientific for a minute, what's every organism's job on the face of the earth?
To reproduce themselves.
Reproduce and survive.
To reproduce, right? To pass on your genetic material. It doesn't matter if you're a bacteria, a plant, or an animal. Our job is to reproduce to the next generation, pass on our DNA. Every organism on Earth. So you can argue to execute on that biological fundamental principle, food is the most important thing when it comes to nutrition. Okay, but we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Here's this notion of the triage theory, okay? So I call this my job security slide. If I don't show one very complicated graph during a presentation, I'm at risk of losing my job, right? I've got to be a scientist a little bit. So there's this notion of the triage theory, and don't get hung up on the details. We're going to break this. I'm actually going to pull it off. We're going to break it down step by step. But I'm going to talk about the triage theory for just a second. So this is some work done by Professor Bruce Ames at University of California, Berkeley. Is everyone familiar with the concept of triage? Right? If there was to say a bus crash outside, the medical professionals would rush in, they would look at the most injured and put them aside and go work on the people they know they can save, and if they get time, they'll come back and work on those severely injured, right? So they're triaging the scene, okay? So Dr. Ames, just an absolute genius in the field of nutrition, he has this theory that our bodies will sacrifice long-term survival. They'll sabotage our long-term survival so that we can live on the short term, right? We can live the day-to-day to make sure we pass on our genetic material, okay? Triage theory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to walk you through the graph, and I ultimately want to make the point that, yeah, food's important for that day-to-day, but if we really want to talk about optimal long-term survival and health, we also have to be thinking about these vitamins and minerals and other nutrients, okay? So on the bottom we have the dose, okay? So I'm going to pick on vitamin C, so maybe the dose of a vitamin C supplement that I'm taking. So as the dose increases, I'm going to increase the concentration of vitamin C in my blood. But what our governments have done, have come up with the recommended daily allowances, okay? Whatever word you want to use, whatever words your countries use, they seem to switch about every year. I'm sticking with the RDAs, recommended daily allowance, okay? So our governments, did anyone know the history of the RDAs?
Yeah.
World War II.
What's that?
World War II, it's for the minimum that the soldiers could get by on in order to survive for their nutritional dried food supply.
Is exactly right. So, right, it's was done towards World War II, right? When we were fighting World War II as allies, they were developed to give us a competitive advantage on the battlefield because they were eating exactly dry food, like the food from the packages and whatnot. So they started seeing their troops as they were overseas. They were starting to get these diseases of nutritional deficiency. So our governments asked the question, what was literally the minimum amount of nutrition we could feed our troops to keep them healthy and give them that competitive advantage on the battlefield? Well, that carried over to the post-war efforts, right, with a lot of the rebuilding that went on in Europe, liberating concentration camps. We had a massive depression back in the United States. So as we were doing these relief efforts, trying to get our economy back on track, the governments were still asking the questions, what's the minimum amount of food, what's the minimum amount of nutrition we could feed everybody to not let them get these diseases of nutritional deficiency, okay? So I'm picking on vitamin C, but if I don't get enough vitamin C from my diet, what's that nutritional deficiency disease? Scurvy, okay? Does anybody in here know anybody who's had scurvy? I always hesitate to ask this question. So I've had two hands go up, and ironically both times it was in Australia. And the two gentlemen who raised their hands, one, I can't remember, worked on a ship for a number of years, like a freighter ship. So he would just be like overseas for, a number of years, okay? Well, that's an extreme case. The other guy was a cowboy. They call them ringers over there. So he was out in the outback, and it's kind of an initiation to him being out in the outback. They purposely don't give him fruits and vegetables, kind of a cruel initiation. Well, he was tough. he gutted it out, and he got so sick 3 months into this trip, they had to helicopter him out of the outback, and he almost died from scurvy. So these RDAs, again, we're talking about vitamin C, are developed to prevent diseases of nutritional deficiency. In this case, scurvy, okay? Now, do you know why you develop scurvy? Anybody know why you need vitamin C? For collagen synthesis, exactly. So here's the beauty of Dr. Ames's triage theory. He also gives us the scientific mechanism why. So we get scurvy because we stop making collagen. Collagen is nothing more than really the glue that holds our cells together. So those cells that turn over the most quickly in our bodies, that's where we start to see the symptoms of scurvy manifest, okay? So things like our teeth, right? That's why our teeth fall out, because our gums turn over pretty quickly. We bruise easily, and then collagen is also essentially important in our blood vessels. So eventually our blood vessels disintegrate, and again, we tend to die of a cardiovascular event, okay? But what has been shown in the scientific literature over and over and over again is that if you take just a little bit more vitamin C, you can help with energy production. So if you're feeling maybe a little bit fatigued, or someone you know is feeling a little bit fatigued, they might be vitamin C deficient. Again, and sorry, here's a scientific mechanism, but because you can make these two molecules that are intimately involved in energy synthesis. What's been shown is if you take even more vitamin C, you can actually, ironically, help support your cardiovascular health. And again, the scientific mechanism is here, okay? So if this is something similar to that health continuum, but a continuum from bottom to top, good, better, best, where would you like to be living?
Best.
Up at the top, right? So what's a good source of vitamin C?
Fresh fruit and vegetables.
Fresh fruits and vegetables, and especially citrus fruits, right? So if I eat an orange, ironically only has about the RDA level of vitamin C, but if I eat an orange, but let's say it's going to follow this curve, is my level of vitamin C going to stay up like is shown in this slide? No, right? Eventually,
You keep taking it because it's got a short half-life.
yeah, she's saying you have to keep taking it because of the half-life, and she's exactly right. So eventually our bodies are going to utilize it, consume it, excrete it, right? And our levels are going to come back down. Apologize. Going to come back down. So talking about half-life, does anyone know how long this takes to get back down to baseline?
8 hours?
No.
About 8 to 12 hours, exactly, okay? So you ever wonder why we recommend people take their products at least twice a day? It's to turn this curve around and keep you in optimal nutrition, to keep you in the optimal part of this continuum. Now, something else that's so interesting about Dr. Ames's work is he goes on not just to talk about vitamin C, but he applies this triage theory to a number of other essential vitamins and minerals, okay? And again, he's putting the scientific rationale why that's important. So, I'm gonna go back one more slide. So, talking about the triage theory, what he's saying with this whole premise is our bodies will rob vitamin C from these mechanisms to make sure we can make collagen so that we don't die from scurvy. And this is why it's so important to keep our nutritional levels topped up all the time. So that's his theory. It's based on very sound scientific principles. But what does this actually look like in real numbers? So this was a study done by the Council for Responsible Nutrition. And they went and looked at a lot of parameters of health: heart health, metabolic health, eye health, bone health, okay? This is the percent of the population that are affected when we fall out of those various health conditions, okay? You add that up, it affects 75% of especially the elderly population. What the study showed is that with simple, cost-effective nutritional interventions, and I love that word, supplements as interventions, why are we not thinking about nutrition as a form of health and healthcare? But that's a debate for another day. So supplements as interventions, and especially these cheap and inexpensive ones: dietary fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, those are the fish oils you probably hear about all the time, B vitamins, chromium, lutein and zeaxanthin, these are things that come from green leafy vegetables, tomatoes, and then calcium and vitamin D, magnesium for bone health. With those simple, cost-effective nutritional interventions, they could decrease these rates by 3.3 to 23%. That's crazy. A pharmaceutical company would kill to have for those numbers for some new drug that they've just invented. That's insane. But what would that equate to here? 6.3 billion pounds of savings here in the UK from simple, cheap, cost-effective nutritional interventions, and just 8.5 billion US. Okay, so, how are we doing then when it comes to nutrition? So some data from North America, the US and Canada. Look around the room. Almost every single woman in this room is going to be vitamin E deficient. Almost every single woman, almost 100% of you are vitamin E deficient. Do you know what the number one source of dietary vitamin E is in your diet? Cakes, pastries, donuts. Number one source, okay? And, oh, by the way, these are just those RDA levels of nutrients, okay? So not even talking about those optimal ranges. And if you want an easy way to remember it, it's what I call the alphabet soup of nutritional deficiencies. All the way, vitamin A to zinc. We literally are nutritionally deficient from A to zinc. And just take a quick kind of mental shot of that. If you'll give me the privilege of just rounding that to about 50% for a slide I'm going to show in just a minute, okay? Okay, that's the US and Canada. You might think you guys are different, but if we look at the World Health Organization data around the world, look at this. 43% of children iron deficient, 38% of pregnant women iron deficient. How many people live in the world? 7 billion. 2/7 of the world's population, iodine deficient. 1 in 3, 33% of school-age children, vitamin A deficient. 1 in 6 pregnant women, vitamin A deficient. Depending on where you live in the world, 17 to 30% zinc deficient. Let me give you a second and read that. Sufficient folate in women prior to conception. You guys don't know what conception is, right? We don't have to have that conversation here. I just had to have it with my 11-year-old daughter. But so, prior to conception can reduce neural tube defects, right? A birth defect by, what's that number? 50%. So what is that saying? If a woman has enough folate in her system when she conceives, she can reduce that birth defect by 50%. World Health Organization data. That's crazy. What's the number one nutritional deficiency in the world?
D.
Vitamin D. Affects the majority of the world's population. Not even on this slide, okay? I love this work done by the Journal American College of Nutrition. They looked at calcium intake over the course of someone's life and their predisposition to, again, get this disease of nutritional deficiency. Okay? You guys all know what osteoporosis is?
Yeah.
Okay, so osteoporosis, would you say this is a disease of the young or the old? How many people say the young? How many people say the old?
That should be the old.
It's a disease of the young, and here's why. You put on 80% of your bone mass before the age of 20. So between the years of 10 and 20, 80% of your bone mass gets put on. So right there, you can argue that nutrition is more important, pound for pound, in children than it is in adults. Okay? You're going to take your calcium up until about the age of 30, 35, 40. Nothing you can do to stop or reverse it. We all start losing bone mineral mass from our bones. Okay? Our bodies start mining the minerals back out of that bone to utilize it in our physiology. And then we just slowly decline the rest of our life. Depending on whether or not you've had inadequate or adequate intakes of calcium determines your health outcome later in life. And I like this graph, this chart, because it illustrates how important it is for nutrition to be a lifelong endeavor. You cannot go home tonight because you feel guilty, eat a salad, and think you're doing it right. Nutrition or health is a lifelong endeavor. So this obviously is for women because it says menopause, but guys, our charts look very, very similar to that without that first sharp dip. So what happens later in life, what we want to do is make sure we're getting enough calcium from our diet so that we can minimize the amount of minerals our bodies have to mine out of that bone, okay? So, foundational nutrition. We need to get back to the basics. And the reality is, okay, we talked about macronutrition in Gandhi, and we talked about the triage theory with micronutrients, but the fact of the matter is, the two have to work together, okay? The two have to work together in tandem. So I like this picture. My mind works in very simple colors and pictures, so probably why it's an old automobile assembly line and in black and white. But this is how I like to think of our cells working, okay? When we eat food, like I showed you in that video, we chop that food up into small little bits. It gets absorbed into our bloodstream, our cells absorb it, and what do they do with those materials? They start to make new things, right? They take that raw material and build whatever that cell needs, okay? Just like this assembly line. So this analogy for me, the cars are like those macronutrients, that food that we're consuming. These workers are like those vitamins and minerals, okay? So what happens if cars stop coming down that assembly line? The workers are just gonna stand around, right? You could have a massive workforce. You could have all your vitamins and minerals right. They're gonna do nothing more than just stand around, nothing to do. What happens if I pull those workers off of that assembly line? Do the cars get made? Of course not. Same thing. Factory line comes to a screeching halt. So remember that number I asked for, 50%? What happens if I pull 50% of the workers off of that line? Do cars get made?
Yeah. Slow.
Cars get made, right? But much more slowly. That factory line is not working as efficiently as it could. This is exactly the situation we're talking about in our nutritional conditions. It's what they call a subclinical, so you can't go to the doctor and measure it, subclinical nutritional deficiencies. Our cells are working, but they're not working optimally. And this catches up with us, especially later in life, okay? Foundational nutrition. We need to get back to the basics. And again, I love these two images because I don't care if you're an elite professional or Olympic athlete, a weekend warrior like myself, or you never set foot in the gym. You have to get that foundation right? You can never build a skyscraper on top of that foundation, and you can never build a nice, cozy, warm home on top of that foundation. You have to get your foundational nutrition right, and then you build whatever health goals you have on top of that, okay? You have to get that foundation right. So what I hope is I haven't defeated you all, right? I've been beating you up for about an hour, but I want to tell you it's never too late to start thinking about your nutrition, okay? So have you ever heard this analogy or metaphor? When's the best time to plant a shade tree?
20 years ago now.
20 years ago, right? I wish I went to the gym this morning, but the second best time is right now, right? And just like that first plant analogy, that first plant thought experiment, literally the sooner you start intervening, you can move yourself back the right way on that health continuum, okay? So I would like you all to just, write down one thing if you would, tell a friend maybe you came with, text it to yourself, text it to your friend, text it to your spouse. But, what's one thing that you would like to change in your health? Do you want to go for a 30-minute walk every morning, right? Do you want to get better about eating fruits and vegetables? Are we going to get better about taking our nutritional supplements? Whatever that one thing is, if you would, write that down, tell somebody, have them hold you accountable, it's going to start to set you in motion. Because healthy habits, they grow. And I find if we can just get one thing right, all of a sudden it leads to another thing and then another thing. And what I will promise you, if you start incorporating those healthy habits into your lives, and you do those day by day, they will become second nature, and you will improve your physical condition, okay? Just like those plants. So what I've been talking about so far, right? Why nutrition is important, and especially the difference between minimal nutrition and optimal nutrition. And if I've been effective at making the scientific case in those first 2 points, your only next question should be what?
How do I know what supplements?
Where do I go, right? Where do I turn for this help, this nutritional help? And if you'll indulge me, this is the part of my talk where I'm going to brag a little bit about the company that I work for. And I'd love to couch the conversation in our mission statement to develop and provide the highest quality, science-based health products in the world. And I break it up into 2 points, quality and science. And I'm going to first talk about the science that's behind USANA. I'd like to start with this slide because I think it shows USANA's commitment to scientific research, right? Over 75 scientists on staff formulating your products, reading the scientific research, doing the research in-house with our scientific partners, and developing technologies like Olivol, for example, that's in our nutritional products and our skincare line. Hybrid technology, and that's something else we've utilized, revolutionized the delivery systems of some of our products. Poly-C, an advanced form of vitamin C. And we can talk about it later this afternoon, but something we launched 2 years ago in cellular technology, which has really revolutionized the nutritional industry. And now we see a lot of competitors trying to catch up with us. The commitment to USANA at Science is second to none. So I promise I'm not going to show any more needles. But just to remind you, that little burger video I showed you would be like a clinical study, right? I ate a burger, and we measured something. Now, it's not a very rigorous scientific experiment, I'll give you that, but that's really how scientific studies work. You do an intervention, and then you measure things over time. Well, we will do these types of studies right in-house. And because we have that in-house clinical studies team, we can do these very, very quickly. So let's say if a vendor were to come to us and they'll say, hey, USANA, we've got the next new greatest thing in nutritional science. Of course, we want to look at it, but we're not going to just trust them. So we will clinically test if what they're telling us is true. So we'll do these bioavailability studies. So here's an example where we looked at the bioavailability of curcumin. And curcumin is really the active ingredient in turmeric. You guys all heard of turmeric, the root, especially in Indian cooking, Thai cooking. Just like if I were to say the active ingredient in an orange is vitamin C, curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric. So curcumin is notorious for being poorly bioavailable. It's a mouthful. So this company came to us and said, we have a form of curcumin that's 5 times more bioavailable. Well, we didn't believe them, we tested it, but look what we found. We didn't find 5 times more bioavailable, we found between 20 to 60 times more bioavailable. Wow, so what did we do? Upgraded our products based on that research, okay? And I get this question all the time, do we ever publish work in the peer-reviewed scientific literature? So we published exactly that research, and it was accepted in the prestigious Journal of Natural Products, published out there for you all to see, okay? Like I mentioned, we partner with research institutions around the world, okay? One study that we published with Boston University School of Medicine was a study looking at a form of vitamin C and also a form of grapeseed extract, okay? We found tremendous benefits when it came to cardiovascular health, and that research was presented at the American Heart Association, okay? So I could go on and on and on, but if you want to know more about the science behind USANA's products, again, if you go to AskTheScientist.com and you just type in clinical research, you can see everything that we've done and published. Both things published in the scientific peer-reviewed journals, kind of internal documents we write up for ourselves, and then all the references and patents that we've worked with, especially with our partners. And it goes on for page after page after page. So that's just a little bit about the science behind the products, and I think really where I really want to focus the time is on quality. Because like I mentioned right off the bat, the nutritional industry does not have the best reputation in the world. So let's talk about quality for a second. I don't know if this hit the media over here in the UK or not, but this was a big deal in the US. And what happened here was, the US is made up of 50 states, and they all kind of run like little independent countries. And each state has its own head attorney or lawyer, okay? So what happened in one of the states, New York State, was the main attorney, the attorney general, went into a number of major retailers and he pulled products right off of the shelf. And they're all retailers you would know and recognize. Pulled these products off of the shelf, and he was in collaboration with a laboratory. So he sent these products off to the laboratory, and what they were looking for was the DNA fingerprint of what should actually be in the bottle, okay? So it's one thing to read it on the label, but they were asking the question is, what on the label actually in the bottle? Well, guess what they found? In the majority of cases, they could not find that DNA fingerprint of what was supposed to be in that bottle. And on top of that, they also found a number of contaminants. So this hit the headlines, just a couple of years ago. I recently went to this is our kind of oversight in the United States, our Food and Drug Administration. I went there and pulled up what they call their warning letters. And I don't know any of these companies, and I picked them on purpose because I don't know them. So I don't mean to pick on anybody in particular. But these guys got in trouble for, look, adulterated, misbranded supplements, adulterated supplements, misbranded, adulterated, misbranded supplements, right? On down, false claims, right? Even in 2018, 2017, this stuff is still going on in the nutritional industry. And again, this is what sets USANA apart. I'm going to show you a little video, and it is over the top, and it is from America for sure, but it's actually over the top, but it's telling the truth. Okay, so a little insight into how slippery the nutritional industry can be.
So this stuff I've tried, loaded with sugar. Tried this. I've tried this. Of course, I've tried this. Everybody I think's tried muscle milk. I've tried this. Tried this. Tried all these drinks. If speed stack weren't enough, you have extreme speed stack.
The supplement industry is very unregulated. You don't have to have FDA approval to come out with a dietary supplement. That gives people room to come out with some, lower quality products.
This product says new legal formula on it. I don't know what the old formula really had in it. Belizean man vine extract.
I don't want any part of that.
Best if used by date and lot number on bottom of can.
Yep.
I always thought the health industry was about, health. Why does it feel like we're back in the Wild West?
You'll clean your teeth and turn your hair. The best in the West. I wouldn't be dead without a puddle.
Well, we can all thank the senator from Utah, Orrin Hatch.
Look how good he looks. I want to get his brand, is what I want to do.
See, the health industry is big business in Utah. They make almost a quarter of all the dietary supplements in America. And supplements are a $24 billion industry. So you do the math. Making supplements used to be like making prescription drugs. You had to prove your product was safe and effective before you could sell it. Well, the supplement cowboys in Utah thought that was a real hassle. So they asked their favorite senator to change the rules around. And now you don't have to prove your product is safe at all. And the FDA has to prove that it's not safe if they want to take it off the market.
What is this red goop?
This is the Canadian version of Redline. We had to take out some of the ingredients that aren't legal in Canada.
Thanks to this deregulation, the supplement industry exploded, and all sorts of new and interesting people got in on the action.
We were always a good team, whether we were selling drugs or whether we were selling a supplement like we are now. Jekyll and Hyde supplements, formulated to awaken your other side. Take this and all of a sudden you become the freak, the monster. Everybody wants to become a monster.
If Valentino can make a supplement, I bet anyone can do it.
Hold on. How many guys you need?
I need 2 guys. We're making dietary supplements, and I just need a hand with a couple things. It'd be really easy.
All I need you guys to do is take the white, boom.
First, you buy a bunch of really popular ingredients. But the trick is, I'm just going to use a tiny amount of each one. It's what we like to call in the supplement biz, pixie dusting. See, I can hide my secret formula behind the term proprietary blend, and not reveal that it's pretty much just a pill full of rice flour.
That's a good way to make a lot of money. On seasonal supplements.
But with all those expensive ingredients on the label, I can make this bottle for about $1.40 and sell it for $60. Thanks, Orrin.
We're in the supplement business now.
The scary part is that everything I just did is by the book.
So I'll cut it off there, but right, did you hear that last line? Everything he did there was by the book. Everything he did there was legal, okay? Right, the majority of the supplements in the world are made in the United States, and again, it's an over-the-top example, but it's not that far over the top of what can go on. So this industry really is buyer beware. So I want to talk about the things that we do specifically to set ourselves apart from, especially the competition and especially those bottom dwellers. So the reason I think you can get away with that is literally, and just forgive my simple words, but literally, if we wanted to sell nutritional supplements in the state of Utah in the United States, this is the only certificate that we would have to have on file. Okay? What does that say? Food establishment. And forgive me if anybody in here owns a restaurant or a bakery or coffee shop or anything, but we think making a nutritional supplement is a little bit harder than baking a cake, okay? But that's all we would need is that certificate, okay? But really for us, we use this bellwether that we call the USANA difference, and especially the USANA difference quality equation, right? So you have to start with the best raw materials, period. And we source our raw materials from around the world. And we always make a very scientific decision, both on quality and safety, when we source those raw materials. Now, we can have the best raw materials, but if we don't have people formulating your products who know what they're doing, and you saw those scientists right up on stage, if you don't have scientists who are formulating your products, you can have the best raw materials, but it's not gonna matter. Because some ingredients work together to give you synergy, and others can actually hinder each other. And then on top of that, some things aren't even stable when you put them together, so you're getting nothing in your product. But then, it's not enough to just have the best materials and formulas. If you don't have full control over the manufacturing process, it can also fall apart. We manufacture 100% of your supplements in our facility in Salt Lake City, Utah. We do it, we don't outsource it, okay? Innovation, our products, just like I was talking about that curcumin, so as nutritional science does advance, our products follow with those nutritional advancements. And then monitoring, what's that? We guarantee that the date on the bottom of that bottle, that on that date, what you see on the label is still going to be in your product, okay? You add that all up and you get a quality product. But those are words, right? So what do? We go far beyond just having this minimum requirement. You do not have to register with our FDA, right? The Food and Drug Administration in the United States. But you can go to the FDA website and you can type in USANA Health Sciences and you can see that, you know, we're good to 2018, right? We register every year. You don't have to do this. We're voluntarily opening ourselves up for on-the-spot random audits. Literally, they can show up at our front door, come in and say, hey, we're with the FDA, can we talk to whoever? And I want to see this, 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 and this, on the spot. So we have to keep our books up to date all the time. And so there's a certificate for the registration. But we're in 24 markets around the world. Any guesses where our strictest, most tough market is around the world? Europe? No. Now you're proud Europeans. It's Australia. So they monitor nutritional supplements like over-the-counter medications. Okay, so it's their Therapeutics Good Administration, or their TGA, and so we sell in both Australia and New Zealand. So we have to stay compliant to the Therapeutics Good Administration guidelines, and we don't have one line dedicated for Australia. It's all coming from the same place. But then we adhere to good manufacturing practices. So again, this is an auditing agency. We can't talk about them, we can't utilize them unless they come in and audit our facilities. So we're GMP compliant with USP, and you would think one company would be enough, but we go to an additional second company, NSF, and again, get qualified for good manufacturing practices from a second organization. But again, not just for general dietary supplements, but we're also registered with them for sport, okay? An additional regulatory level. We're kosher in the markets we need to be kosher, and we're also halal in the markets we need to be halal. And then we're a member of industry watchdog organization, United Natural Products Alliance, or UNPA, really trying to self-referee and clean up the industry to get the people making the supplements in their kitchen to stop. But what I think speaks best about the quality is for you to actually see the process in action. So I've got a little video tutorial, and I'm going to kind of walk you through and narrate it as we go. So this is our facility in Salt Lake City, Utah, and you can see how massive it is, our commitment to being green. And just to orientate you all, this is the front door, okay? So I'm going to come down, I'm going to come in, and I'm going to come through the front door, okay? So I'm going to come through that front door, and you're greeted by not necessarily a huge, massive staff like you're going to see, but you'll have Sylvia and Amanda there to greet you, just two of the nicest ladies you've ever met in your life, okay? So the tour's going to start in the laboratory, and we're obviously starting in the front door, but where this really should start is in the back door when we receive the raw materials, okay? So as we receive the raw materials, they're met by a quality assurance, quality control technician who actually samples the material, and they bring it into the laboratory, okay? So they bring it into the laboratory. That raw material gets quarantined in the warehouse and doesn't move until it passes all of our laboratory testing. So if you think about something, our core product, our multi-mineral, multivitamin product goes through over 1,000 different tests before it ends up in your hands. And again, you can just see all the sophisticated equipment that we have in the laboratory. And we're not just validating that what we bought is actually what we received, but I think more importantly, we're testing that it's not contaminated with anything. Organic contamination, what we call the biological contamination, like yeast, mold, E. coli, some of that testing's going on right there. So it's just test after test after test, right? That old adage, trust but verify, okay? So we go from one side of the quality assurance lab, we'll kind of go around the corner, we go to the other side of the quality assurance lab, and once it passes our test, we remove that material out of quarantine, okay, and it's going to go up into manufacturing. But you can't just go into the manufacturing facility, okay? You go into the clean room, you have to put on pant covers, lab coat, boot covers, hairnet, you're a little scruffy like me, a beard net, and we don't even trust people to wash their own hands. We make them stick them in a machine, and they have to keep their hands in there until the cycle finishes, and then they put gloves on. So then when you finally look like my buddy Will, you're allowed to go into the manufacturing facility. And so we're going to start with some of the cleaning protocols, right? Nothing happens until a complete clean has been done. So they will literally wash the walls, the floors, the ceilings. Everything gets scrubbed down. And it's not just washed, like that's not just water. These cleaning protocols have been validated by our microbiologists. So you talk about they're not very popular because the microbiologists will come in behind them and they'll swab all the surfaces and they'll plate it out to see if there's any bacterial contamination. And if there is, they got to update the cleaning protocols, okay? So now everything's clean, we're all dressed up, we can actually enter the manufacturing facility. So we're going to go meet one of the technicians who's actually weighing out the products for one of our products. So there he is again, you can see how he's dressed. And it's important that everything runs on a barcode system. Nothing moves in the warehouse until it gets barcode scanned. We know where everything is all the time, okay? But more than that, we have systems in place where it's called form weight, where as they're weighing out the materials, again, you cannot physically dump the material into the mixing blender I'm going to show you in a minute until it's weighed out perfectly. It's literally impossible to make a mistake. And then on top of that, right, with the TGA, the FDA, we just paper trail after paper trail after paper trail. So once that happens, the technician's ready to now add it to one of the blenders. So it gets added, it goes through some complicated engineering with some sifters, and it gets dropped down into a blender. So we're up on the second story here, and it gets dropped down into this massive blender on the first floor. So we'll go down from the weighing room, and we'll go down into that blending facility. So a little bit of a long trip, we'll get there. And the engineering that goes into it is unbelievable, because if you think about it, some of the ingredients are on the gram level, and some of the ingredients are on the microgram level. So to get a nice uniform blending is really, really engineering feat. So the engineers have worked out exactly how many times for each individual product that blender has to turn over to get that nice uniform mixing. And again, it all comes from just testing and validation, okay? But once it gets blended, it gets put into these, what we call bulk bags. From there, we do additional testing, so we are testing for the uniformity in that raw good. But then we also take it back upstairs because everything's gravity fed again. So going back upstairs, the material comes back in and it drops into one of our tableting presses. We have a number of these on site, and some of these machines are absolutely incredible. They can make up to 500,000 tablets per hour. Okay, wow. So that's how from one facility we can supply all of our markets around the world. But every 30 minutes, they're coming in and they're sampling again. So we're making sure that during the actual process, everything's going properly. So we'll test for thickness, weight. This is what we call friability. So we want to make sure if they're shaking around in the bottle to you, they're not going to chip, they're going to come to you whole. We test to make sure that they're going to disintegrate when they go in. So our standard is 20 minutes. If a pill doesn't dissolve in water within 20 minutes, the batch is no good. It's just testing, documentation, time after time again. So they were testing for thickness. We're testing for how hard they are. We want to make sure they get to you whole, right? Testing is the common theme. So after we've made the tablets, they're then ready to go into what we call the coating, okay? So they go into our coating room, and we coat the tablets for a number of reasons. I think most of you think, oh, it's just for ease of swallowing. But the coating also helps with stability, so we can keep the product fresh longer, and it also helps from creating some dust, so it also helps hold the tablets together a little bit. And really, just looks to me, my untrained eye, like a souped up drying machine. But again, the engineering here with the jets, it's temperature controlled, humidity controlled, mostly runs under a vacuum as well. And again, they know exactly how long each batch has to be in these coating machines. So you would think now that everything's coated, maybe it's ready to go into a bottle, but not quite, because there's still one more step in the process, and that's an actual visual check of the products. So, right, a very tedious job, but we want to make sure that everything still is going to even look right to you all, okay? Nothing leaves our facility unless it's perfect. So then it's ready to go into our tableting facility, okay? So our bottles come in sterile, but we still kind of give them one more little blow of air just to make sure there's no dust that might have fallen into them. Again, the amount of engineering and foresight that's gone into that bottling facility is unbelievable. If you notice, nobody in the technicians in the facility, we don't even have plastic buttons on lab coats. It's all metal. So if a button were to fall off and fall into one of the bottles, or if machinery were to break, you see it's all metal, we have metal detectors that scan every single bottle. We have weight detectors. We check the number of tablets inside of every pill, test after test after test to ensure the quality. So tablets come in, they get the lids, and then eventually they get labels. And also on every single bottle, you'll see there's a lot number. So you saw that documentation that was going on through the process. If you give us a lot number, we can literally tell you the field around the world that raw ingredient came from, and we can tell you everything along the way. I can even tell you the technician who weighed out the product. I can tell you the technician who was on the bottling line, on and on and on, okay? So once we get everything bottled up, it's finally ready to go out to you all in our markets, okay? So we get them packaged up, and then we go out to our shipping line, and here's a good little tour. You can see just how massive our facility is. That's the quarantine area right there. And we've got our shipping line out in the back. And again, everything's barcode controlled. So as an order comes in, we slap a barcode on it right away. The technicians use what we call a pick to light. So you'll see some lights show up here a little bit. So as the lights turn on, they pull the product, and then they take it off the shelf and put it in the box, okay? All of that goes into getting you a simple little pill or bottle of nutritional supplements, okay? So it's not just all of those checks and balances that go into the quality control. It's just when you add everything up and pile it up, our green certifications, all the certifications we have on file that we do voluntarily is really what sets us apart from the competition, okay? We guarantee with our potency guarantee, potency, quality, strength, composition, identity, and purity of the products. So I'm gonna finish up here. I gave you all of those words, I gave you all those videos, all those visuals. I think the thing that speaks the most highly to the quality of our products are all of those elite professional and Olympic athletes that do take our products. Most of them don't make millions of dollars, right? We have this notion that, oh, if you're a professional elite athlete, you're making all this money. But where do they make most of their money? From sponsorships, right? Their reputation is really where they're making their money. They are not going to compromise their reputations by putting an inferior product in their bodies. So we offer up to a $1 million athlete guarantee that if one of our athletes tests positive for banned substance or performing enhancing drug, we will compensate them and make them whole again. And we can do that, again, because we're certified by various third-party organizations, okay? I'm gonna close here with a video, and you can hear from the athletes themselves.
None of you people can tell me to stop.
You want to be a well-oiled machine, and to do that, you need to be fueling your body with the best of the best.
If I don't put the right things into my body, it won't perform when I ask it to.
I've worked so hard to get to where I am today, and I'm not about to risk it on a supplement that I don't trust, so I choose USANA.
So what are you afraid of? Those feelings are made of. Get in the game, you're moving the fame, so then what you made of. For anyone asking who is the best, we putting our hands up.
Why do I take USANA? Because USANA's the best. I know it's clean, I know it's safe. I can't chance my career and my reputation on a product that I don't trust.
You know, that's also a reason why you have so many athletes on USANA.
We know what it takes to be reaching the top. Tell me to stop, my town, my crown. We know what it takes to be reaching the top.
I trust USANA because
I trust USANA.
I trust USANA.
Trust.
I trust USANA because it's safe, it makes me feel good.
I don't have to worry about what I'm taking.
I know that I'm getting everything I need.
It's about the products.
How cool is that? So as you can see, right, this isn't just our mission statement, but really it's more of our promise to you, right? We're going to always continue to provide the highest quality science-based health products in the world, okay? So again, what I've told you today and what I really want you to take home and is just the importance of nutrition. So I hope I've given you a few tidbits you can incorporate into your lives to make you or your loved ones just a little bit healthier. And then I hope I've made the case that we should be the company you turn to. Okay, so thank you very much for coming out on a Sunday. I really appreciate it.